Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Be the Bank. My name is Robert Haitha, host of the show, founder of FIXnotes, and it's my job every episode to bring you everything that I know about the secondary mortgage market to set you up for the best chance of success in this exciting niche of the real estate space. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Word and all of the cool ways that you can use the tools available to you to optimize your note business for efficiency, to create processes and awesome systems through this great and kind of underappreciated software. Of course, Excel gets all the credit in the note investing world, but Microsoft Word has some tricks up its sleeve as well. So let's start the show. All right, everybody, it's episode number 45. On the 25th of May. But of course, these episodes have the longevity to be reviewed into the future. You can always get something out of these episodes well beyond the time that we upload them. If you are live with us, feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion, anything you want in the live chat. Or if you're watching after the fact, you can use the timestamp chapter markers to jump ahead to the case studies or the feature, whatever you'd like to review specifically in that episode, or leave a comment after the fact and I will respond as soon as I can. So before we get into the industry update overview for today's episode, I want to share with you what's going on. Spring has sprung here on the property. Lots of exciting things happened. So this was just yesterday. Let me show you a cool scene we found. This is right outside the office window. We saw a fox mama. And it was pretty cool because later in the evening, we saw two baby foxes with the same mama walking around the driveway, which was just very cool to see. So I'm glad I got to capture it and show it to you. And another really interesting wildlife appearance occurred later in the evening last night. So I'm going to show you that too after we go over the industry update here. All right, let's get into it here. With the industry overview, we've got an update from CoreLogic today, which is going to be kind of interesting. They shared with us that the US delinquencies are at their lowest level in more than 23 years. This was data from February, and I believe that this is the trend that they've been seeing progressing for some time post-pandemic and somewhat as a result of the CARES Act, I believe. So here's a couple of charts which I thought were interesting to share after this quote from the chief economist for CoreLogic, Dr. Frank Nothalf. While job and income gains have helped push delinquency rates lower, some families continue to face financial stress. 1/2 of the borrowers who are seriously delinquent are behind on their payments by 6 or more months. Even though this group has been declining, the number that have missed at least 6 monthly payments is still double what it was in the months immediately prior to the pandemic. So while there is a significant amount of the significant delinquent, the 6+ month delinquent, we are seeing improvements in that subset as well as across the board. 30 or more days past due went from the pink section over here, 5.7 last year, February 2021, to 3.2% in this February. 30 to 60 days, 30 to 59 is a little bit less of a decline. And we see that across the board here with a pretty significant decrease. Over half of the rate has been cut here for the 120+ days past due. And then even the foreclosures are down. Now, foreclosures in general are very low because of the pandemic. A lot of the courts slowed down and did not process foreclosures. So these rates are below the norm, but we can see that even over the past year, they've continued to decrease. One more chart for us here. This one is across the entire country, and we can see that a number of states, actually every single state, has experienced a decline in the year-over-year change in delinquency of the 30+ day delinquent borrowers. But we see incredible gains, or rather decreases, in these pink states, and similarly, not quite as high, but similar reductions in the delinquency in the blue states here. And then of course the gray states are a smaller or a non-change, but improvements nonetheless. So really interesting to see that delinquencies are improving across the country, but I think it might be the calm before the storm. There are still borrowers who are getting out of these forbearance plans that are going to need to either reinstate their loans by catching up all of the past due payments or resolving with a new modification agreement. So these loans may eventually come to the secondary mortgage market. Time will tell, of course, but this is something that, of course, we're monitoring as we go forward. All right, so now let me share with you, and I know this isn't about mortgage notes, but it was a very strange occurrence that happened last night. I was taking a shower, maybe that's TMI, but I noticed something strange in the shower. So let's take a look at it. And I don't know if you can see it there, but yes, there was a tree frog hanging onto the eucalyptus leaves that my wife put in there for some fragrant scent in the flower. And this little tree frog was just looking at me like, how did a tree frog get into the shower? Well, very, very weird indeed. But I did do some research. There are tree frogs here in Pennsylvania, which I thought was strange. And they hang out on the roof sometimes in the day to sunbathe. They crawl up your vent stack and they fall down the pipe into your sewer and then go up the drain into your toilet or into your shower. So TMI, once again, I apologize. But I thought it was a really interesting wildlife occurrence because we know we love animals on this show. And speaking of which, we've got our few cameras here. We've got our bird cam. Nobody's out there right now. And then, of course, the koi. They're all chilling. And hopefully we'll get to feed them at the end of the show if the camera hasn't died by the end of the episode. Okay, so let's jump over to our feature here, which is Microsoft Word for Notes, docs, tools, and tips that you can leverage as a note investor using this very simple word processing program, which may be a simplicity. There's more than meets the eye underneath the hood here in Microsoft Word. So we're going to start with some documents, which I think are really important to get familiar with. And we're going to look at these docs as well through the lens of the FIXnotes free course, How to Invest in Mortgage Notes, where we've produced a lot of these documents for you to review. So first one is the Loan Purchase Sale Agreement, the LPSA or the PSA or the LSA. There's a lot of ways that investors, when they're communicating via email with abbreviations, can refer to this, but the full length name is LPSA, Loan Purchase Sale Agreement. And the main things you want to understand on this document are the dates, the reps and warrants, and other terms that you'll find within the text of this document. Now, in Microsoft Word, you can use, and we'll talk about this in more detail very soon, you can use mail merge to insert the names of the buyer and the seller and the dates and the reps and warrants. If you're preparing a lot of these contracts, you can make it easier. However, I use a PDF generating tool through Podio for my loan purchase sale agreement generation, which then is sent via right signature to my counterparties. But Microsoft Word, of course, is another way to generate these. Now, if you go over to the course, you can see in the 11th module here, Understand the Contract. This is the as-is mortgage loan purchase sale agreement that many sellers use. It's kind of a boilerplate contract. And as you scroll through here, you can read this and start to understand the terms. You'll see the dates, you'll see the counterparties. In this case, we're using FIXnotes as the buyer and the seller is just a placeholder, seller LLC. Now, this isn't in Microsoft Word, of course, but the language of this agreement is really what you're going to need to pay attention to when you're buying loans especially. So a couple of things to look at. One would be the closing date and the cutoff date. The cutoff date is important to understand. What this essentially means is the date, the payments, and all activity on these loans becomes the possession of the buyer. So the cutoff date means that if a payment comes into the seller after that date, they would have to forward it along to the buyer because it's now owned by the buyer, the notes that are part of this contract. So as we scroll through, a lot of these are just general terms. Of course, you want to know the purchase price and the transfer date when you're going to actually get the servicing transfer from the seller and the collateral document transfer as well. You can see the details here of the purchase price and how the price is allocated across the portfolio. As we scroll down, we can see some more detail about servicing. And this is the one I wanted to highlight here, the representations, warranties, and covenants of both the buyer and the seller. Reps, warrants, and covenants of the seller. This is really the most important section to look at as a note buyer because this shows you exactly what the seller is representing with regards to the assets that you're purchasing. You want to look here for language like, of course, that they're duly organized and these transaction is within the terms of their operating agreement. But then something that's missing here, because this is an as-is purchase sale agreement transfer, is the reps and warrants around complete and enforceable collateral documentation secured by residential real estate. Now, in this case, there could be unsecured loans sold in this portfolio, so this is totally as is, but part of this section, Article 6, is the reps and warrants around the enforceability of the documents. And it's nice that we have this here, that the seller will honor requests for assignments and allonges made by the buyer within 30 days. Now, most good counterparties aren't going to be a stickler when it comes to a 31-day after the transfer to execute an assignment of mortgage, for example. But the contract needs to require these dates. So you will see them as you scroll through. Now, repurchase is another important section. It's secondary importance to Article 6 because if you do not have any reps and warrants, there would not be any reason to repurchase loans. But repurchasing a loan is basically a refund when something doesn't match in Article 6 and something is essentially misrepresented. So the remedy here is that the seller will buy back the loan from the buyer if it does not meet the reps and warrants in Article 6. And the next most important thing here is going to be the schedule, which is normally on a separate page, and that will have the whole exhibit of all of the loans available in the portfolio with the prices and the balances and all the information you need there. And then finally, a bill of sale, which isn't executed until after the funds are received and the deal has been concluded. So that's the purchase sale agreement, just a very high level overview. You can check that out on the free course on FIXnotes.com so you can learn a little bit more about the nitty gritty language and understand the changes to that language based on the contracts that you execute or you intend to execute as a note buyer. So next one here is the assignment of mortgage. The assignment of mortgage, as you know, is the transfer document that's recorded in the public record to bring the security instrument from the seller to the buyer as far as officially vested ownership. Now, the assignment of mortgage, and the allonge, well, we'll just jump to this now as well. The allonge is the endorsement of the promissory note. So as you know, and if you've watched this show more than once, you probably already know this. The assignment of mortgage transfers the mortgage. The allonge transfers the note. Those are the four most critical documents in a loan sale. The note, the mortgage, the assignment, and the allonge, all of which together make up an enforceable collateral file, barring any unforeseen other nuances to the loan that may be also recorded in public record. Now, I did want to switch over here and show you. You also have the assignment template here, and this is in 14. Module 14 is auditing collateral docs. We see a note, we see an allonge, we see a mortgage, which is also called a security instrument or a deed of trust, and we see the assignment. So what's interesting about these documents, especially in regards to Microsoft Word, is the fact that if you are a loan seller, you're going to be generating these documents, and creating a template in Microsoft Word to merge these documents together is a very useful tool indeed. Now, similar to the loan purchase sale agreement, I personally use a PDF generating merge tool within Podio for my assignments, allonges, and loan purchase sale agreement. But getting started, you can create these templates in Microsoft Word with just a single program. Well, two, Excel and Word. And we'll talk about mail merges very soon here. So definitely check out the course for all this detail. And just to nuance one further item here, an allonge looks like a separate page that's officially the final page of a note, but it also can be a stamp, just like this. And a stamp is an endorsement that can just occur right at the bottom of the note or on the back side of the note. These stamps are allonges in a very simplified form that is enforceable and does show the chain of title. So next is RESPA, the Real Estate Settlements and Procedures Act. And there's a hello letter and a goodbye letter. When you transfer a loan, the seller sends a goodbye, the buyer sends a hello. And when I say seller and buyer, I mean the servicer representing the seller and the buyer. And this document as well, for many investors who opt to self-service their loans, which means they do not have a loan servicer, which is not recommended, and there is certainly some liability there if you do not have all of your licensing and regulation in check. You do have to generate these hello and goodbye letters yourself if you are a self-servicer. So I do have a mail merge format of a hello goodbye letter here. And we'll go back to this to talk about mail merge very soon. But the high level is it is required as a loan servicer to send these when the loan is transferred or when the loan is received through a transfer. So really important to understand the RESPA hello goodbye letter. And with regard to mail merging, I think it'll be a great example to show you that process. Now, next on the list is TILA and the FDCPA. This is the Truth in Lending Act and the Federal Debt Collection Practices Act. Now, the FDCPA letter is sent on every loan. This shows what the current payoff balance is and some more details about the new servicer. The TILA letter is generally, at least to my best understanding, only sent for senior position mortgages and not junior liens. Now, everything is subject to changes in the future based on regulations and how things evolve. But at a high level, this is what you need to understand. And I personally like the fact that servicers have to send that FDCPA letter because it's sort of a 1-2 punch. When a loan is transferred, they get the RESPA hello, they get the RESPA goodbye as well. I guess it's a 1-2-3 punch because then they also get the FDCPA letter. So there's multiple mailings coming out to a borrower when a loan is transferred. So they get hit with all these different letters, which will eventually stimulate for non-performing loans a borrower response to their loan servicer to get a new modification agreement in place. And I've seen that time and time again, proactive borrowers responding to these letters and getting deals done pretty quickly. So here's some more documents for us: the payment history, the welcome package, the demand letter, the modification agreement, and the proof of claim. So a payment history is another important document to show the past due loan activity. And I'm showing you this in the Microsoft Word conversation here, the episode on Microsoft Word, because it can be formatted in different ways. Generally, I see payment histories in PDF form from the seller, but most recently I've started to see these documents in a format called .cgi. And I guess I don't have it ready to go here, but .cgi is a database format, I believe, that's through an SQL query, and I may be wrong there. But what's interesting is if you change the file format from .cgi to .txt, you can open it in any word processing program. So I'm going to show you that. There's another point on this later in the episode, but I do want to stress just the importance of being creative and being a problem solver. When items like that come up, you can look into it and figure out a solution so that you do have that document, that payment history available to you. Now, a welcome package is another, maybe a fourth punch. If we say 1, 2, 3, 4 punch, it's the goodbye RESPA, the hello RESPA, the FDCPA letter, and then the welcome package. And this is something that many loan investors opt to send to their borrowers when a loan is initially transferred. Some people call it the shock and awe letter campaign. And essentially what it means is an explanation of the lender, an explanation of the new process with regards to getting the loan out of default. And this is sent by note investors buying non-performing loans who are looking to introduce themselves to the borrower and start building rapport in a positive way. Now, if you're buying reperforming loans, this isn't really necessary. And unfortunately, there are some investors who just buy the loans, send the just bare minimum requirements of letters, and then file for foreclosure. But investors who I believe are doing right by the borrower are introducing themselves in a way that puts everybody on the right footing to then get a deal done. So a welcome package is a nice part of that initial letter campaign. Now, in the event that a welcome package does not stimulate the response and they do not respond to the RESPA or the TILA or the FDCPA letter, the next step would be an attorney prepared demand letter. Now, a demand letter is something that we're talking about in Microsoft Word as well, because it does not necessarily have to be prepared by the attorney who's filing the foreclosure. I may be wrong with regards to specific states on this, but the attorneys that we use who are licensed in the West Coast do have Microsoft Word templates to generate demand letters across the whole country. Now, if the borrower doesn't respond to that demand letter, it's possible that a licensed attorney in the specific state is going to have to send another demand letter, but it does help stimulate that response to get that legal letterhead demand letter in the mail to show the borrower that this is a serious situation and they do need to address their delinquency. I wouldn't recommend sending your own demand letters, but that could be something you could discuss with your counsel. Depending on your volume in a specific state, maybe it makes sense and you'd get enough success from sending that demand letter that it'd be worthwhile, even though you might have to resend it in some situations if you're actually going to go through the next steps of the foreclosure process, or rather if the borrower doesn't respond and you have to go through the next steps of the foreclosure process. Next is the modification agreement, and this would be the document generated in the event of a successful conversation with the borrower. Now, a modification agreement might be a discounted payoff agreement instead, or a lump sum to settle the loan, but generally I'm seeing borrowers executing modification agreements to start a monthly payment again to get back on track. And these are important to get approved by an attorney in the specific state if you intend to the instrument that's being modified. So modification agreements are a very great document to have a template ready for. By the way, all these documents can be reviewed and downloaded through the Mortgage Note Mastermind, where we have an entire section of tools, documents, and other templates that are very, very useful. So this modification agreement is one that I'm using in Microsoft Word all the time. Now, I did build it out in Podio as well, but generally because of the nuances of specific situations and how some borrowers need slightly different terms, I found that doing it in Microsoft Word makes a little bit more sense to be flexible. Finally, last document on here, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are so many other documents in this space, but these, I believe, are some of the most important documents to understand. The POC is the proof of claim. And a proof of claim is the response to a borrower's bankruptcy filing, so the lender can show the courts that this is a valid lien, a valid claim on the bankruptcy proceeding that the borrower does need to address. So this is generally prepared, drafted by your loan servicer, and then finalized by an attorney. And then it's filed so that you are then in the mix with the bankruptcy so that you can get your payment when the bankruptcy plan is prepared and approved. So that's just a couple of documents. Now, like I said, you can go over to our course and you can see the RESPA letter here. This is in the high-level servicing strategy. You can learn a little bit more about RESPA, and then also actually, here's RESPA letters. You get the language right on the website, and I did remove a little widget that was disallowing copy paste. So you can copy and paste now to get that language right onto your own Microsoft Word. And these are what's called merge tags, which once again, we'll talk about mail merge very soon because that's a very, very cool feature of Microsoft Word. Now, it is important, trust but verify, all of these types of language that you're sending via mail to the borrower in writing. You want to get those approved by your attorney before you just trust and just send it based on a YouTube episode that you saw. Despite the fact that I try to be as factual and accurate as possible in this space, it is important to always get another opinion from a licensed professional. All right, some helpful tools. So here's an interesting one, save as template. Now, if you save in Microsoft Word, file, save as, and go drop down this list and pick .template. Now there's the older version, or I guess I only have the older version on this. Oh, here it is, Word template. .x is a Word template. And essentially what a Word template does, and this would actually be a good document to save as a template, what these templates do is every time you open that document with the .x suffix after it, it automatically copies itself upon opening. So it's really nice because, and I've had this problem, it's funny because it's a real issue. If you're creating a modification agreement and you're using a previous modification agreement that you maybe still want to have that draft of as your template, and you start deleting the old borrower's name, adding the new borrower's name, putting all the details that you need, and then accidentally save it, or maybe even it auto saves, then there goes that previous draft of that previous modification you were working on, and say you do have to edit that later, well, now it's been overwritten with another borrower's detail. So by using the .x suffix here, the template suffix, you can have those documents automatically duplicate so that you're not risking the fact of overwriting a previous modification that you maybe are using as a template. So helpful tip. I don't use the templates that much because I'm just pretty fastidious about pressing file save as soon as I want to create a new version of that document, or even duplicating it in my Finder or your file, whatever it's called on Microsoft PCs. So that's a good tool that you can use, especially if you're very organized and you have a folder full of all of your templates that we've been talking about here. Using the .x can be an easy way to stay organized. Now, headers and footers are another great tool in Microsoft Word that you can use to create letterhead. So if you go up to File, headers and footers, and I often will just use help. Header and footer is over in your view, and this will essentially open up the header and footer section of a document, so you can add in your logo, you can add in your address, you can even put a footer with maybe your signature if this is a letter that you're going to be sending. And that can be super useful to save some space on your document for starters, but also to create a template, once again, that you can use for future mailings. And there's a lot of reasons why you might want a letterhead type of document. The welcome letter campaign, of course, QWR responses. A qualified written response is what you need to do when a borrower requests all of the data on a loan. They want to see the note, the mortgage, the assignment, the allowance chain, payment history, all the statements, everything. They ask for this. And it's nice to have a cover letter on your letterhead just to explain what's enclosed in the package and how, once they verify all this information, how they can move forward to get a deal done. Also, a credit bureau letter for borrower assistance is another nice use of a document on your letterhead. Credit bureaus, if you're not reporting to them, or if your loan servicer is not reporting, are important to be addressed by borrowers who want to save their credit. So it can either be part of the settlement where the borrower has a contingency on making the payment that you'll either report to the credit bureau or prepare this letter of support for the borrower. And that can definitely be a useful thing, even when a borrower hasn't yet paid off, but they want to improve their credit for a future refinance. It can be useful as well. Now, the possibilities with regard to letterheads, there's so many different letters that could be generated on these. I'm just really talking on the portfolio management side, but this can also be done on your letter of intent when you're buying loans for sale, or any type of marketing to banks and other sellers that you might do. It's very important to have a letterhead document to really emphasize the professionalism of your organization and show these banks and other, especially borrowers, that you're a serious organization and are professional. So paste special and paste with match formatting is another useful tool here. If you use the edit paste and match formatting, you can copy items from an Excel sheet, for example, or from some other source, and make sure that it doesn't get pasted in your document with whatever the original formatting that you copied it from was. I use paste and match formatting all the time. Even so, I've memorized that hotkey there, the four button hotkey, which is super useful. And paste special, sometimes I'll opt for that one because you can change the formatting when you paste documents, paste text into a document. So super important to understand, and even better to understand the hotkeys to get these things really ingrained so you can be very quick with it. So if you do not know how to paste special or paste and match formatting, give it a shot. It could save you some time. It definitely saves you time if you end up pasting with formatting and then have to strip that formatting off later. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and I don't see any birds out there, but we'll check on the koi. Oh, no koi either. No birds. No friends today. Well, we'll keep an eye on them, because as much as we like talking about notes, we do have to decompress looking at nature from time to time. So some more helpful tools here. Find and replace. Here's a big one. I use find and replace all the time. If you search a document and you add whatever you're looking for, I even have a perfect example here. I see the name of the previous servicer in here. It shouldn't be. So let's put in that name and find, and then replace. So what we can do is change that to, we'll change it to like, this isn't a real merge tag, but we'll just pretend it is. We'll change that to previous servicer. Now we replace all, and there we go. It was only 2 instances of it, but now we've got previous servicer in where there was some bad information to start with. Now, find and replace can be really useful for contracts. If you're changing the buyer or the seller name throughout the entire agreement, or maybe their address. It can also be useful in a very interesting situation in Microsoft Excel, rather. But if you're getting a document that has a lot of double spaces in it, you can find a double space and replace it with a single space. So there's 8 of them, 8 double spaces. Replace all of them. There we go. We got rid of some unsightly double spaces and turned them into single spaces. A lot you can do with that find and replace tool. Very useful and can save you a ton of time. Okay, let's go on to macros. Now, macros I'm not super familiar with on the Microsoft Word side, but from what I understand, they're pretty easy to create because they don't require coding. They just require a pressing of a button to start the recording, and then an ending of the recording to essentially track all of your keystrokes. So let's see if we even know where macros is. Oh, it's probably up here. Let's see, I think maybe tools. Macro. So when you click record macro, you can start your keystrokes, and then you end that macro, and every time you click the button, and if you go to macros, you can see the macros that you've got available. I don't use them as of yet. Then it will run those keystrokes again. So pretty cool. There's a lot you can do with it, but it does require a little bit of trial and error, and of course some creativity to find the best possible uses. But it's a great tool to have, and I love the ability to have a little bit of overhead into what you can learn and grow into. And you're not just limited by a system that doesn't have all of these additional features. Track changes, you probably already know about this one. You might know about all of these, but track changes in review is an interesting way to collaborate with people. Now, personally, I would not be collaborating as much in Microsoft Word unless you have to. Using Google Docs, where it's in the cloud already, is more useful for this type of collaboration. But it is cool that you have this feature once again, and I believe there is a Microsoft Word that is cloud hosted where this track changes tool can be a lot more useful. And then finally, mail merge. Yes, for more than just labels and letters. A couple examples here: asset summary pages, assignments, allonges, purchase sale agreements, modifications. There's a lot you can do with mail merge. And we're gonna look at it over here because we've already got the merge tags. And if you go to mailings, and first you select recipients, so you want to use an existing list because you probably have an Excel file with all of this data in it. And then once you select your spreadsheet, then basically you can preview results. And unfortunately, let's see actually if, unfortunately, I don't have a spreadsheet template to merge this in, but I wanted to draw your attention to it because there are so many great tutorials online on how to use mail merge. This is more of a primer, an introduction to the fact that this is a powerful tool for note investors. And essentially, you can generate these documents. If you've got 100 borrowers on a spreadsheet, you'll generate 100 of these letters, 200 pages. And just the same, you can use this for generating your labels. Now, there's a huge database. Oops, I don't want to do that. Here we go. There's a huge database of different, of different label formats. So I like using the Avery US letter formats, and there's so many of them. I have a pack of them over here. I just did some mailings the other day from Staples, and Staples actually makes like a generic version of some of these. And so you just look at this code, it's like 5090 or something. I could just go find 5090, and then that would be the correct size to print exactly on to that specific label. And you know, I wanted to get to it, but it really doesn't matter. But the point is, you can generate the letter and the label to make your mailing process so much easier. But like I said, there are more uses to mail merge than just letters and actual mail. Here's a cool one. This was a presentation, not really a presentation, but part of my exhibitor booth at a conference back in 2018. And this is a little catalog of performing and non-performing loans for sale. So essentially what I did, in the middle here, you can see a green and a red tab here. That means one side is non-performing, one side is performing. And all of these fields have been merged through a Microsoft Word document. Now, I looked everywhere for the source file before I started the episode, and I couldn't find it. So unfortunately, I can't show you on the screen. But I can show you, just to get your mind working about what this is capable of. Anything on this page was from a spreadsheet. And all I had to do was create the template in Microsoft Word a single time, and then generate that and get all of these other accounts in, including the images, which was part of the trick of it. And that's why I do want to find that template, because that was the hardest part to figure out. In any case though, this allowed attendees of the conference to flip through it like a catalog and see what deals were available for sale. Now these deals are long gone. These loans were sold a long time ago. But it was a really cool way to use mail merge in kind of an outside of the box thinking type of form. So definitely think in terms of how you can create a batch of documents that have the same look and feel, but different content within them. Bunch of things you can do there, but that was a cool one. Asset summaries. Let me pull that off. And then of course, assignments, allonges, purchase sale agreements, mods. We've already kind of covered that. Having these standard documents that you then merge in your loan level data, super important. And you do have to have a spreadsheet in order to generate those fields. All right, some tricks and tips for Microsoft Word. First one, WPM, your words per minute. You got to master touch typing. Even if you're slower right now at touch typing, which just means putting your index fingers on the F and the J and the subsequent keys around that, it makes a huge difference. And in fact, we can look at my hands here. That's touch typing. Put your fingers on both spots, and you can look ahead and type without even thinking about what keys you're pressing. If it takes longer right now than hunting and pecking, don't worry, it will be much faster in the long term. So don't hesitate, and that's kind of a theme, I think, of life in general. If you try to take the easy way out, you'll end up handicapping yourself in the long run. So by taking the time to learn something that takes longer at first, the dividends that it pays off in the future are going to be huge. Now, mail merge, we've already talked about, it's here again, but some best practices for ease of use and time saving. Field formatting on your source Excel file is super important. So when we were looking at this, this document here, these things that I made, you can see some dollar amounts. Now, if you did not have that formatted as a currency or an accounting field in Excel, and you went to merge this, it would just be a block of text or a block of digits without the dollar sign or the comma or the period for the cents. And it can get a little confusing. So when I've recently merged letters, I made sure to have those fields in the correct formatting so it doesn't look like a number, it looks like an actual figure of money that's owed. And that's really helpful to understand the first time, because if you don't, you're going to be merging it again and again to get everything optimized and correctly. So another little tip here in Excel side before you do the merge is to merge or split the cells in Excel to optimize your final merge in Microsoft Word. And essentially what that means is that if you have the address in one big block and you want it to format like, you know, city or street, city, state, and zip, then separate it. Maybe even separate it just into two pieces. One is the street and the other is the city, state, and zip. So then when you merge them onto the letter, it looks like a proper convention for formatting letters. Same thing with actually putting fields together. I'll use address as another example. If you have a different mailing address than a collateral address, so the borrower is living in a different property, it's not owner occupied, then having the collateral property address in a single field might be useful, because that's not where you're mailing it. That's just showing the borrower what loan, what property that loan is secured by. So merging or splitting cells can be really useful before you create that final merge. All right, another one here is filter recipients and insert merge field. So when we go back over to Microsoft Word, and unfortunately I have to actually click a list to be able to see this, but insert merge field just shows you the headers of each of those fields on the Excel side. It shows you the title, you know, at the top of the column. And when you're merging, when you're inserting those merge fields, like collateral property address is one of those fields, you want to make sure that you add them in exactly how they are here. Now, if you have a template like this that's already created and you're building the Excel sheet around these fields, then you'll just want to make sure that the convention is accurate and you have, in this case, underscores between each of the words and everything reflects exactly back to the Excel sheet. If not, you'll just have to reinsert them. And another reason I mentioned inserting merge fields is because there are a few commands in the merge field dropdown as well. For example, next record. Next record, just instead of inserting anything, it just goes to the next line on the Excel sheet. That is important to understand because if you, for example, try to make labels and you don't insert that next record, you'll get an entire page of labels, but they'll all just be the first row on your Excel sheet. So by clicking next record as one of the merge fields, you won't see any merge in that specific part of the document. You'll just go to the next record on the Excel sheet and then you'll have a whole page of labels for different borrowers, for example. Filter recipients is useful as well. Recently, I was doing some A/B testing on a mailing and I had a specific field as part of the spreadsheet, not a field that there was any intention of merging into the document, but more a back-end tracking field for what subset of the A/B test it was. So by using the filter recipients, I was able to create one mailing just for the A group and another mailing just for the B group without having two separate spreadsheets to have both of those subsets identified. So really important to play around with the features that you have and use them to their fullest extent. Now, we mentioned this before, that is the .txt suffix change. It's kind of a one-off example that's pretty uncommon, but I think in general, when you come across a format that should be some type of textual document and you're not able to open it, changing to .txt will allow you to open it in a word processor or any type of text editing tool. So just a nice little trick to understand if you come across a file format that doesn't make sense but should be able to be viewed in something like Microsoft Word or your text editor. All right, so that's it for that main section here on Microsoft Word. Please leave a comment if you have any questions. Once again, this was sort of just a primer to get your mind thinking about what's possible using Microsoft Word, so then you can delve into some other tutorials with more detail and more information so you can actually put that to work. But putting these tools in your toolbox as things that you understand how to do will definitely help you save time and money in the long run, so you don't have to hire an expert on something like this. You can do it yourself. Also, really important to create these templates, because if you want to hire less skilled labor, people who you can train on these tasks, having templates makes the training so much easier and more repeatable and less chances for, those fat finger typos. So really cool to maximize your ability to use Microsoft Word in tandem with Excel for a lot of these mail merge tasks, which of course you can look back at our previous episodes to learn more about Excel and some of the awesome formulas that we implement on that side of the Microsoft Office suite. So speaking of training on these specific topics, we got the Masterclass. Now our first Masterclass was the bulk portfolio due diligence. And actually, since we're already over here, let's give you a quick overview. The Bulk Due Diligence Masterclass is our first course designed exclusively for Mastermind members. This is included as part of their subscription, and it is a 5-part video series. And I believe that I do not have privilege on this login, or maybe I do. Cool. So it's 5 parts. There's a video. This first one is 24 minutes. There's me in the office. And then it includes a whole text-based supplement to the video as well, along with download links so you can follow along and do the due diligence yourself in Excel as well. So really cool. This is a lot of high-level Excel work that you're going to learn, skills in Excel that you can translate to different areas of your business as well. This one's an hour long, whole bunch of text-based content as well, with the additional links of some information you can use for your future due diligence projects, like state-by-state. We've got a whole database of state-by-state references. Here's another one doing some manual type of work. That's a 24-minute. So these are awesome. 5 video training. And the reason I'm showing you this is because this is sort of the example of what the Masterclass tentative schedule looks like. Because our Q2 course, we're going to create one of these every quarter, is how to find and close more deals. This is such a valuable thing to understand, and what most note investors need to learn more of is how to find and close more deals, how to build relationships with sellers, get more deals done. So this is going to be our next video course, and it's coming out Q2, exclusive to Mastermind members. And I know we're in Q2 already, so this is pretty close. Right around the corner here, we'll have this next course available for you. Q3, this is the tentative part, because we're not sure if this is going to be the next episode or the next class, which is Microsoft Excel for note investors, and then efficient portfolio management. So if you'd like to vote on these, go to FIXnotes.com/survey. You can order these topics. And as you see, number 1, after our so far of our responses, finding deals has been the number 1 requested topic. So you can definitely jump over to FIXnotes.com/survey. Someday in the near future, maybe not near future, but someday that survey link will probably go to a different survey. But for now, the Masterclass topics is what you can weigh in on over there on the FIXnotes website. All right, so let's talk about assets for sale. Now, the assets for sale are all available in the Mastermind. This has been evolving over the course of the year. At the beginning of the year, we were selling some loans to the non-disclosure agreement signers and some loans to the Mastermind members. But as the Mastermind grew, now it's over, I think we just hit 100 members. These deals are going very, very quickly just to the Mastermind members. So in order to get access to product at this point, joining the Mastermind is your best bet. We've got this app called the Aggregated Trade Desk. This is our back end of the Mastermind group. And we've got tons of deals listed on this Mastermind Trade Desk that you can reach out to the specific brokers or specific sellers. Other members will list assets here. My assets from my clients will be on this list. This is where you go for current deals for sale. All right, so let's talk about case studies. An important part of the call is where we put the rubber to the road, talk about some actual deals that are happening. And I'm going to check on the koi just to take a deep breath here. Get ready for the case studies. And there's no koi, there's no birds, there's nobody except for us and our numbers here. So case study to begin with is a non-performing second mortgage secured by single-family residential property that was resolved through a discounted payoff for $28,496. Case study number 87. So our fair market value of this single family property was $440,000. The senior lien is $493,000, which leaves us negative $53,000 of equity, securing our UPB of positive $56,992. So we are underwater significantly on this deal. Now, the non-performing loan was pretty affordable because of that fact, $10,800, which is just shy of 20% of the unpaid principal balance. This was purchased as part of a package. So the pricing was a little bit more favorable because of the bulk buy, but in general, because of these negative equity situations, you're going to get a better deal in these situations, but you're going to see a little bit more risk. So the three questions we ask our borrowers are: what happened, where are you now, and what do you want to do? And those three answers are what allow us to craft a resolution that fits their needs as well as the investors. So in this case, the loan was sold right in the midst of a property short sale. So the borrower had a buyer. They were almost ready to get this property sold, but it had to be a short sale because of that negative equity situation. This is back in 2020. Their last ditch effort to avoid bankruptcy is to sell this property. They're very clear when they sent us this notice that if they were not able to get a short sale done, they had to file for bankruptcy. So they needed to get all the liens released, and they've got this buyer ready to close. But if the lien holders do not agree to take a short payoff, less than the amount owed, then we're out of luck. We're in a bankruptcy proceeding. Now, since we're a secured lien holder, we may have some chance in BK, but because of the negative equity situation, it's very likely that we'd be wiped out in that bankruptcy. Now, in this case, the documents provided proactively were really useful. The borrower sent a message as soon as they found the loan had been transferred with a hardship letter, the payoff quote from the senior lien, the HUD settlement statement, the pay stubs, the tax returns, and even the signed offer from the buyer. Now, the most important thing in that batch of documents, assuming that you know what the senior lien balance is, the payoff quote is super important. But most important, in my opinion, is the HUD settlement statement. Because what the HUD settlement statement does is gives us all of the different liens on the property and all of the cash inflows and outflows between the buyer and seller, so we know exactly what's going on. And in this case, we found that there weren't just the first and the second position mortgage, there was also 3 judgment liens against the borrower. So our equity situation was even worse than we expected. So to sell the property for $440,000 to satisfy the first and the second lien and all 3 judgment liens was the borrower's intention. And at this time, back in 2020, we saw all of this information and we were like, well, I guess we're gonna have to take a pretty significant haircut. We're actually gonna agree to lose money on this deal, settle it for $6,000 rather than go into the BK and potentially get nothing. So it was very interesting because we sent that discounted settlement acceptance, that short sale acceptance at the $6,000 figure, and it was rejected by the senior lien holder. So after 10 months, we did finally get $28,496 through an interesting turn of events here. So I think that's in our takeaways section. Patience is rewarded in a seller's market. As you know, what happened between 2020 and today, the market got really, really hot. And even though our $6,000 short sale acceptance was rejected in 2020, it expired. Then the borrower came back to us and they're like, hey, we need another short sale agreement here. And at that point, we were like, we need 50 cents on the dollar. We need 50% of the principal balance on this deal. And turned out they were able to increase the sale amount because the market had improved. And they sold for over $500,000, paid off all the lien holders, including our second position mortgage, for $28,496, or half of the balance owed. So I really like this deal because, and this happens from time to time, I haven't talked about it before, but a lot of borrowers are really, really happy at the end of it when they get a deal settled. And you can savor those well wishes. You can, what I like to do is just tag them under testimonials when I get a friendly email. So this is what the borrower said. Oh, after the IRR, 196% return on this one. Doubled her money in less than a year, which more than double, which turned out to be an excellent deal, even though it looked really, really sketchy at first. It didn't look like we were gonna make any money on it, but it turned out pretty great. So those well wishes, that email from the borrower, I think I maybe need to do this so you can see it all. So first he sent me this message. At any rate, I wanted to thank you for being so helpful, most of all for being so responsive when just about everybody else was not responsive in any way. This closes this chapter of my life. I'm looking forward to moving on. So I felt good about getting that message. But then a couple of emails later in the same string, he says, Rob, I especially want to thank you for being responsive throughout my ordeal selling this house. You are a rare bird. So of course I had to respond that as a bird lover myself, that was a really big compliment. And unfortunately the birds weren't here to hear that one. But really cool to get those great responses from borrowers. It really makes you feel better about helping them in a position where you could make a lot more money in some cases, but when you help a borrower and get those positive feelings to help a community out, that's really what makes it so much more worth it. Not to say that you can't make money in this space. In this case, we almost made a 200% internal rate of return and help the borrower save 50% on their loan, but it is important to understand the ways where you can work with the flow and not against the grain here to help a borrower out of a tough spot, to earn a great return for the investor, and to get some praise in the meantime, because words of affirmation I think are probably my love language. So I'd love to hear that. All right, next case study, non-performing second secured by a single family residential property, modification agreement where we had a payoff of $15,300. So this one's cool because it's unlike some of the other modification agreements we've talked about. This wasn't a fix and flip. This was actually a payoff at the end of the mod. The borrowers paid their monthly payments until they were able to settle it entirely, and then they paid off a $15,300 remaining balance. So fair market value on this is $156,700, $105,335 to the senior, which leaves us at $51,365, covering our $17,546 balance on our second position lien. We bought this loan for $9,650, a lot more than the last deal as a percentage of the unpaid principal balance. This one was 55% because of that positive equity situation. And that's a big driver price for junior liens. As you know, the equity is so important. What happened? Where are you now? And what do you want to do? Well, this one was kind of interesting. The borrower was living in a half-gutted historic schoolhouse. She said it was getting a lot worse before it got better. She's unfortunately going through a divorce, or I think a writ of separation. And they are, at this point, this borrower working as a teacher. They're an ESL teacher locally. They lost, not lots, but they lost $2,000 to a scam contractor, and they spent another $2,500 reinstating the senior lien. Fortunately, they were making some strides to fixing their financial statement by removing their son and their husband from their health insurance policy, which would free up $150 additional per month. And they had a school bus. There's a school bus in this backyard on their lot, which she was going to sell to pay off the loan. So kind of interesting that there was this extra bit of cash coming in, which could be used to get out from under this burden. So right now, though, she wanted to mod the loan, make sure it was brought current, and she was back in a good standing for $200 a month. And then as soon as that bus was sold, she's ready to pay it off. So this one took 11 months, $400 of expenses to get to the collection of $15,300, plus a couple of monthly payments along the way. And some takeaways we learned here. First of all, don't just wait for promised payoffs. You have to negotiate a mod in the short term to align your interests with the borrower. Something I've seen time and time again, when you get these promises, and I actually had a very, very similar deal to this, where the borrower had multiple vehicles on their lot that they were trying to sell. And we had the conversation and they're like, I'm gonna sell these cars and I'm gonna pay off the loan. And we even agreed to a discount. Like, let's get it done next month. You got 30 days to sell a couple of these cars and pay off the loan. And then it was just radio silence. We didn't hear from him for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. At that point, we had to file for foreclosure because we weren't getting anywhere working with the borrower. And literally the day before the sheriff sale, when the property was going to be sold and the loans were going to be paid off, the borrower said, I sold all the cars, here's a full payoff. So rather than saving a big chunk of change by paying off the loan early as we had agreed, he waited until all the legal fees were racked up and the full balance was due the day before the sale, and then ended up paying it off. So you do want to make sure, if you don't want to go through the foreclosure process, and that can be hard for everybody, to put some deadlines around the decisions that need to be made. And in this case, getting a mod in place and then allowing the borrower to bring the loan current and then pay off when she was able to sell her other assets made a big difference to align everybody's interest. Another one here, and this is a good example of a creative deal because of the selling a school bus is sort of interesting, but you can encourage that creativity by brainstorming solutions with the borrower. And I always like to use the loan committee as the bad cop and the resolution specialist is the good cop. And we're helping them put together a deal that works for them, and the loan committee needs to sign off on that deal so that you and the borrower as the resolution specialists, your interests are aligned, and you're able to play off that loan committee to get a deal done that meets everybody's needs. Of course, show some sympathy, build rapport, and here's a good one, communicate in a language that the borrower understands. This borrower was really frazzled and kind of stressed out when we had our initial conversation. And a stressed out borrower is going to respond to that urgent language and the empathy that you can provide to get on the same level. Now, I've heard stories, and this isn't really my approach, but I've heard stories from resolution specialists who talk to a borrower who's really at this high level of yelling and their escalated language, and they're maybe a little bit angry. And when you meet that language and you start talking with that same tenor and that same level of passion, you're able to communicate in that language that they're giving to you and then receiving back. So it's really cool to be able to help a borrower by getting on the same page as them. And in this case, the stress was really overwhelming. So showing a little bit of empathy and then being urgent about getting a solution in place gave the borrower a lot of confidence that we were on the same page here to get this loan paid off. And that's what happened. She paid a couple of months at $200 per month and then was able to make that $15,300 payoff, which resulted in an internal rate of return of 63%, not including the, let me just go back, not including the payments that were received in the short term. And we'll just go to the next slide. Giveaways. So the case studies are done. It's that time of the call where I can share with you how you can get on a 15-minute consultation with me free of charge. If you subscribe to this channel, please like the video, leave a comment. I'd be happy to get on a call with you. All you have to do is go over to robbymax.youcanbook.me to get on my schedule. We can talk about a number of different things, whether it's your business specifically, or a really individual deal situation that you're working on, or high level things like structuring your organization or strategizing for the next steps. Be happy to help. Now, our next mastermind call is coming up. We do a monthly call with our mastermind members, and that's going to be on the first Wednesday of the month, June 1st, 2022. And then at the end of June is our next episode of this show, Be the Bank. So definitely tune back into YouTube for that. And that concludes today's episode of Be the Bank. I do want to mention, of course, our website, bunch of free resources, the Mastermind, which is such a great network, and all the content that we have goes into the Mastermind. The Mastermind group is constantly evolving. As you can see, the Masterclass series is a new endeavor. This is just adding value to the Mastermind members, and that is my goal, to constantly improve the Mastermind group, to add more content. We have a catalog of 17 and then going to be 18 recorded Zoom calls from all of our past meetings, which you can review as a new member. And it will eventually cost $990 per month to be part of this exclusive network. But as of today, it's only $120 per month. We do increase the price by $10 for every 10 new members that join. Not only do new members increase the network effect and the value that this group has, but as we are constantly adding content to the group, it increases in value in that way as well. And if you're a member, you do get 50% off of the consulting rate with me directly. But of course, you can get on that free consultation call over at robbymax.youcanbook.me. Get on my schedule and I'd be happy to talk. So that concludes today's episode. If you want to join the mastermind, go to FIXnotes.com/MNM or podio.com/FIXnotes/mastermind to actually join the conversation over there in our backend portal. And that is that. Once again, you're tuning in to Be the Bank, where we share information on the industry, tech tips, vendor reviews, assets for sale, case studies, giveaways, and so much more. Last Wednesday of the month, Be the Bank. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It is always my pleasure to share this with you and to answer all of your comments in the meantime. So please feel free to leave a comment below. We're going to go jump over to the koi pond here. I'm going to go feed them a little bit, and hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you next time. You know where to find me in the meantime.